Most people think they know what a bee looks like, a yellow and black insect buzzing around a wooden hive making honey. But in North America, that picture is mostly wrong. There are over 4,000 native bee species across the continent. Almost none of them make honey. Most don't live in hives, and many people go their entire lives without noticing them. The bee most Americans recognize, the honeybee, isn't even native to North America. It was brought here from Europe more than 400 years ago. The real native bees were already here, and they've been quietly shaping this land ever since. In fact, there's a good chance they're living much closer than you think. Beneath a small patch of dry soil in your backyard, dozens of tiny tunnels could be hiding just below the surface. Each tunnel belongs to a single female bee. No queen, no workers, no hive. Just one bee doing every job by herself. Around 70% of North America's native bees build their homes underground. On a cool spring morning, you could walk across a trail without realizing you're standing above an entire neighborhood of sleeping bees, waiting for the sun to warm the ground before they dig their way out. And their size is just as surprising. The smallest bee on Earth lives in the deserts of Arizona. It's called Perdita minima, and it's only about 2 millimeters long, smaller than the tip of a sharpened pencil. Now compare that to some native carpenter bees, which can grow to more than an inch long. They're so large that people sometimes mistake them for tiny birds flying through the garden. Their colors are even more unexpected. Forget the usual yellow and black. Some native bees shine bright metallic green. Others are deep blue, glossy black, copper red, or even shimmering teal. They're hiding in plain sight on flowers we pass every day. But here's the part that sounds almost impossible. Bees didn't start out as bees. They started out as wasps. Around 120 million years ago, during the age of dinosaurs, a group of hunting wasps slowly changed their diet. Instead of catching insects to feed their young, they began collecting pollen. It sounds like a small change, but it completely changed the future of life on Earth. Scientists believe the very first bees appeared on the ancient supercontinent called Gondwana, long before today's continents look the way they do. As the continent slowly drifted apart, early bees spread across the planet, evolving alongside the first flowering plants. For millions of years, flowers became better at attracting bees, and bees became better at finding flowers. Together, they built one of the most successful partnerships in nature. Every time a bee visits a flower today, it's repeating a relationship that began over 120 million years ago. Long before humans existed, long before North America looked the way it does today. And if you look closely, you'll still find clues to the bee's past: the narrow waist, the stinger. Even some of their closest relatives are still hunting wasps. But one tiny group chose a different path. Instead of hunting, they gathered pollen. And that single decision helped create the forests, wildflowers, farms, and gardens we depend on today. Without those tiny insects, many of the plants around us simply wouldn't exist. Finding a flower might sound easy, but for a bee, the world looks nothing like it does to us. Bees can see ultraviolet light, a color humans can't see at all. Many flowers secretly use this to their advantage. What looks like one plain yellow flower to us is actually covered with glowing patterns that point straight to the nectar. It's almost like nature painted invisible landing lights that only bees can see. But their vision comes with a trade-off. A bee doesn't see sharp details from far away. Instead, it sees a wide view filled with motion, color, and contrast. The flower stays blurry until the bee gets close. Only in the last few inches does everything come into focus. And once it lands, something incredible can happen. Some native bees use a skill called buzz pollination. Instead of flapping their wings, they grip the flower and vibrate their flight muscles at incredible speed. The vibration shakes loose pollen hidden deep inside the flower.
It's like ringing a tiny bell from the inside. Honeybees can't do this, but many native bees can. That means crops like tomatoes, blueberries, peppers, and eggplants often depend more on wild native bees than on honeybees. Then there are bumblebees. On cold spring mornings, when most insects are still too cold to fly, bumblebees are already at work. They warm themselves by vibrating their flight muscles, almost like shivering.
It's like ringing a tiny bell from the inside. Honeybees can't do this, but many native bees can. That means crops like tomatoes, blueberries, peppers, and eggplants often depend more on wild native bees than on honeybees. Then there are bumblebees. On cold spring mornings, when most insects are still too cold to fly, bumblebees are already at work. They warm themselves by vibrating their flight muscles, almost like shivering. It's their built-in heater. North America is home to around 50 species of bumblebees. Unlike most native bees, they live in small colonies with a queen and her daughters. But every winter, the colony dies. Only one young queen survives. She spends the cold months alone underground. When spring returns, she starts an entirely new colony from scratch. Other bees take specialization even further. The squash bee works almost exclusively with squash and pumpkin flowers. She starts before sunrise and finishes by mid-morning, just before those flowers close. Her entire day runs on the flower schedule. Another native species, the alkali bee, creates huge underground neighborhoods. Each female digs her own tunnel, but thousands of them can nest side by side, turning the ground into what looks like a tiny underground city. Some bees are attracted to something even stranger: you. Metallic green sweat bees sometimes land on people because human sweat contains valuable salts and moisture. It may seem alarming, but they're usually harmless. Most won't sting unless they're trapped or squeezed. And the way native bees build their homes is just as amazing. Mason bees use tiny pieces of mud to seal each nest chamber. Leafcutter bees carefully cut perfect circles from leaves and use them to line their nests. It's careful construction, done by insects only a few inches long. Inside those tunnels, every egg is placed with purpose. Female eggs are usually protected deep inside the nest. Male eggs are placed closer to the entrance, where they'll hatch first. It's a simple design that gives the next generation its best chance to survive. But not every native bee plays fair. About 1 out of every 5 native bee species is a cuckoo bee. Instead of building its own nest, it sneaks into another bee's home and lays an egg there. When that egg hatches, the young cuckoo bee takes over the nest and eats the food that was meant for the host's baby. Some species even invade entire bumblebee colonies, replace the queen, and trick the workers into raising a completely different family. It's one of nature's most surprising survival strategies. But while some bees have mastered survival, many others are struggling to survive at all. Scientists have found that several native bee populations are shrinking because of habitat loss, pesticides, climate change, and longer periods of drought. Some species are declining much faster than others, and researchers are still trying to understand why. The problem reaches far beyond the bees themselves. Native bees help pollinate about 75% of the fruits and vegetables grown in the United States. They also keep countless wild plants alive, supporting birds, mammals, butterflies, and entire ecosystems. Without them, nature would slowly begin to lose some of its most important connections. And yet, most people never notice them. No giant hive, no jars of honey, just thousands of tiny species quietly doing their jobs every single day. So the next time you spot a small bee on a flower, or even a tiny hole in a patch of dry soil, take a closer look. There's a good chance you've just discovered one of North America's hidden pollinators, an insect that's been helping shape this continent for more than 120 million years. Small enough to ignore, important enough that life without it would look completely different.